Hello and welcome to this Capture One Pro presentation. So before I start the intro to Capture One Pro, I'd like to just take you to the Capture One website and point out to you that Capture One is available as a free trial for 30 days. I'm sure those of you that have initiative will work out a way of extending a free 30-day trial. I didn't say that, by the way. However, Capture One Pro is really, in my honest opinion, the best raw editing software. And there are numerous pros all over the world who would say exactly the same thing. So it really is the professional software of choice. We have it available to use on campus in the Image Lab, and we use it for tethered capture in the Copy Studio and Flash Studios 1 and 2. Some of you, I'm sure, are well familiar with it, but Capture 120 is an upgrade of the previous version that we had, and there are quite a few changes in Capture One Pro, all of them good, I would say. And furthermore, Capture One has a really good kind of support setup, and these include a number of webinars where pros at the top of their game really offer some insights with regards to their process, how they use it, which is it's really insightful to see some of these. Also, in the resources, there are a number of tutorials. Most of these really short, kind of coffee break style tutorials that explore all of the tools in Capture One. Initially, if you're new to it, I would kind of recommend looking at the interface explained and importing and organizing your photos before delving into some of the much more interesting stuff available. Okay. Excuse me. So, Capture One has a new Capture One Pro has a new icon. We can see here is the one in purple and blue, and if I click on that, it brings up this dialog box. And what's really important, I think, that when we're using Capture One on campus, or when you're first starting, always start a new session. Catalogs are useful, but that's normally when you're using it quite extensively. So a new session, and I'm going to call this C1 Workshop. And you can see here that it's in my users folder here, pictures, and by default this is where we have it set up on campus. You may wish to change this dependent on your own personal setup at home, and I want to point out these subfolders here. The important one really is output. This is where your processed images will end up. Okay, I'm going to hit OK, and the first thing you need to do is to import some images. So this could be done by going to File, Import, or we can see the import button here on the left hand side, top left, and I've already decided where these images are going to come from, but here we can select choose folder, and but you can essentially browse anywhere here. Okay, so Just get rid of those announcements. So I can select 1, 2, 3, or I could import all images. Okay. I would ignore some of these sessions down here, or options down here even, at this point. But there's so much flexibility in Capture One to be able to rename files, etc. But I'm just going to go through the basics to start off with. So I'm going to import all these images, and you've got an option here as to where the browser exists. So I will show you this while it's importing. If you go to View, Browser, Customize Browser, place below, or View, Customize Browser, place right. Okay, and then you can increase the size of it, etc. Auto hide mode. I like to keep it there on the right hand side. It grounds me, and then I've got a bigger workspace to work on. So we can see here that I've got not such a great image actually. It needs some work. So the first thing I'm going to kind of really look at is, let's take you to a different tab there, is how we can quickly scroll through and select the images we want to work on. So using our up and down arrow keys on the keyboard, and then our numeric keys 1, 2, 3, 4 or 5, or the minus or shift plus, we can label or rate our images. You can select an option there. I like to use a 5-star rating for the images I want to use, and I might use a 4 or 3-star rating for those I'm not quite sure about. So I'm quickly gonna select a couple of images that I like to work with. There we go. And this is a really rapid way of being able to zoom through hundreds of images effectively, rating them. And once you've rated them, if you go to View and Sort at the top here, and then Rating, the browser will place those images that I've rated at the top. The other images are still valid. It just means it's a great way of sorting them, so I know that I want to work on the ones that I've rated. I can always change the rating and bring in more rated images in should I wish. Okay, so with this in mind, I just want to change or go through what you're able to do with the exposure tab here. So as we scroll down, Capture One has a brilliant functionality for making layers, so you can make some local changes. This is a much more advanced technique, and I will cover this in a future workshop. Here we can see the ICC profiles connected to the camera that these were shot on. I can also, if I want to, apply a particular curve. I've chosen not to. So moving down, the white balance tab enables me to affect the white balance between the Kelvin spectrum. So I'm just gonna sit it here. If I don't like any of that, if I double click on the button in the middle, it would take me back to original. I can also hit the revert or reset button to take me back. You've also got the tint control that ranges from the green to the magenta spectrum. Again, I can pop that back should I wish. And there's lots of other options that you can kind of drill into, including a kind of auto mode should you wish, but I'm just going to use my eye on this and warm it up slightly. Okay, quite happy with with that, it feels a bit like it did under the lighting conditions that I shot in. Slightly overexposed, I think, so I'm just going to take that down a bit and maybe just pull up the contrast a bit. I could pull up the mid-tones with the brightness or take them down, and again the saturation, I could just adjust that slightly to stylize it slightly. I don't want really to affect either of those. What I'd like to do is to pull back the highlights a bit, just take that down, maybe add some fill with the shadow. You can see, take that down or bring it up, and I could affect the whites or the blacks should I wish. I don't want to, but there are options there. And the other thing that I like to kind of do with an image like this is in the clarity tab here. I can increase the clarity, which makes it a little bit too harsh, so I'll just uncheck that. And the structure can be quite useful just for being able to add a little bit of definition, I think, to some of the detail of the image. Okay, there's also options to be able to kind of control the levels and the curves, and further down you've got vignetting, which enables you to add a vignette if you wish, although more importantly if you use a wide angled lens, sometimes there is some vignetting that occurs, so you can just add a little bit more exposure to the edges of the frame. Okay, so I'm quite happy with that, I think. So what's really useful, if I have a similar image that I want to kind of apply these settings to, the adjustments to, up here on the right hand side we have a copy apply function. So if I press the arrow there, that's now copied these settings. I move to the image I want to apply these to and press apply, and it applies those settings. So whilst this worked okay, it didn't work perfectly. I think the exposure needs to be changed, but you can now go back, apply that extra edit if you like, and you can see here that even if I wanted to, I can just cool this down a little fraction. So we're keeping, I suppose, our images in a kind of uniform look and feel. So that's a really useful tool, and you can apply that to as many images or as few images as you wish. Okay, so that's fairly standard. What I want to look at now really is perhaps the color of an image. So I'm going to go slightly away from this and look at this image here. Okay, so I'm just going to make some very slight changes to this image, and just going to change the structure there a little bit. Okay, so if I go across to the color tab, again there are lots of different options. There's the white balance option, there's a color editor, so you can select a color range and affect the hue, saturation and lightness within this. It's possible to select black and white and then use the color channels within this to affect it so it's more or less contrasty. So you're really exploring the color channels to affect the way the black and white image works. I just want to pop back there because I don't want to do that. So what I want to really focus on here is what I think is a very useful tool, and in the color editor it's the advanced tool. So if in the advanced tool you can see it's grayed out, if I click on the dropper there I can select a color, and we can see here the color is identified here. This can be adjusted to take in colors that are adjacent or not, and you can see here the smoothness also bleeds into other colors, so I'm just adjusting that slightly, and there is our target point right in the middle. So this will enable me to affect the hue that's capable within that color range. Both of these look horrible, I know, so double click on that. The lightness, again, both of those look horrible, double click on that to take that out, but the saturation is quite useful. So I just want to take very slightly the edge off the image with the saturation so that the wood looks more natural. It's very subtle. Okay, so the other thing I want to explore is, now I've done that, I'm just going to take the Kelvin down a little bit. And there's a very slight blue cast that exists on here. It's from the window here. So if I click on that, we can see the blue cast there. So again, if I just take that out a little bit, we're creating something that's slightly more natural, or not necessarily natural, more that fits my aesthetic. Okay, so I'm quite happy with that. So the only thing I want to look at is possibly how we can just finish this image off. So I'm not happy with this edge up here. You can see there's some keystoning where it goes in towards the top. So if we look at the cursor tools here, there's some really useful tools that might enable us to kind of improve our workflow. The pan tool here, if you select and double click, allows me to kind of zoom in, and we can see if there's any details that we want to change. Sadly there's a reflection there which is difficult to fix at this point. Should have used a polarizing filter, I think, but you can have a little look around and you can see what's going on. Double click again to go back to the normal view. This is useful, I find very useful. This is the keystone tool, and you've got an option between vertical, horizontal, or both. So if I identify that there's vertical lines that I want to straighten, and if I drag these points across to these vertical lines, if I press apply in the middle, it will just straighten these up and make it nice and neat. So really important for a shoot like this where there are some quite key architectural lines. You can also use the straighten tool to rotate left, right, or freehand, or the straighten tool is really useful. So if you click that along a line, either horizontally or vertically, and it would just straighten those up. The crop tool, you have a number of options for aspect ratios, output, original, unconstrained. It's worth playing around with this. I tend to use original, which is the original pixel dimensions that were shot at, were shot, and you can drag the corner in to identify your area of crop. You can move the crop area around within the frame. So I'm just going to balance here between the top and bottom of the frame on the left. If you click to another tool, the crop will be applied. Go back to the tool to see the crop, or you can enter to apply the crop. Okay, so this is versatile. It will always be there and can be changed on the raw image whenever you want. Okay, except this will be applied when the image is processed. Okay, so let's go back to one of these previous images. This one here, so we can see that I quite like to drag out a line to straighten the vertical lines. I'm going to then quickly keystone vertical because this area on the left hand side is not perfectly straight. It's got a bit of keystoning. Press apply, and we can see that this also slightly crops into the image. Okay, I'm quite happy with the way that looks. So you can see here that if I double click on here, there are a number of spots, bits of dust actually. You can also scroll through using the mouse control should you have that available. I'm using a magic mouse so it's able to do that. So this tool here, which is spot removal or cloning mask or healing mask, is very useful. So if I create a draw healing mask, I simply do that by clicking on here and clicking, and we can see I can drag around my reference point to make it match up for any texture or grain, or in this case the pile of the carpet. And you can notice here on the left hand side that it's created a new layer which we can turn off and on. Layers are informed by the background layer, so any changes we make on this will have the same exposure values, etc. It's just layers is a really good way of working, so you can really go to town on what's it's capable of here in Capture One. I'm going to do an advanced session on layers later on, but for the heal tool it's important to point out. And the heal tool cursor can be changed by either right clicking or control clicking, so you can increase the size and the hardness of any of the tools, even the opacity, yeah, or just use the square brackets to increase or decrease the size of that. So we can see here actually, if I scroll through here, that one wasn't so good, was it? So let's just see where we're able to can get rid of that one. Can't really see that one. Okay. We're going to leave that one for a minute because it's slightly off the frame, which is slightly annoying, but let's just zoom into this one, hit the tool again, and let's pretend that didn't happen, which I'll probably edit this one out at some point, but I think for now we have to roll with it. Okay, and we can just select a few of these options so we can clean up these dust spots. If I just go off it, you can see we're starting to clean up quite nicely. And again, it really depends on what you're trying to clean up and how important it is that this is done really well, or whether it's a case of just kind of like in this case hiding them so that they don't actually notice. Okay, so There we go. That's cleaned it up somewhat. I will do this at a later date. These areas over here, it just take too long. Okay, so that's one useful tool that's available there. Also, up here, the before tool, before and after, it enables you to kind of look at the edit that you've made. So that's before and that's after, and you can scroll that and leave that at any point there. That's a really useful tool. And the grid tool is very useful. It brings up a rule of thirds, so great if you're trying to kind of crop an image to a composition, or if you want straight lines as a reference for something a little bit more architectural. The exposure warning enables us to see those areas there that might be either highlights and or kind of shadow areas that are beyond the gamut of the image. So in this case, these red areas here are showing that we are really slightly overexposed. So if I take the highlights down on this image, not going to make much difference. If I take the exposure down, you can see them disappear, but again, it's finding the balance between the particular image that you're working on, and you can affect local adjustments again using layers, and again this is something slightly more advanced. I'll show you later on. Okay, so just say I was happy with these three images here. I've done my work on them. What I need to now do is to process them. Okay, so although I think before I do, no, I think that's everything. Yeah, I need to process them. So to process, if you go up here to the output tab, is the gear kind of icon, and if I click on that, and you can see here that I've got a number of options that you can scroll through. These are already preset, and you can add your own. So if you have a particular size, format, color space that isn't there, you can add your own and basically just decide on what you want to add as a format option, color space, size, resolution, etc. So I'd like, in this case, for these to be processed as a Photoshop document, but also I'd like to select JPEG, which is Instagram optimized. So it's kind of it's set up as an sRGB color space, and the quality has been reduced, and it's scaled to a particular size. If I click on this, we can see there with a maximum width of 1080 pixels. With both of these selected now, if I press process, the progress is indicated here with an orange progress scale, and we only had 3 images, but that should be done. So if I minimize this and open up my pictures, and we can see there's my workshop there, and if we go to the output folder here, we can see here that I have 2 images of each, one being a small JPEG and one being a Photoshop document. Okay, so it's it's very quick and easy to be able to process the images. So yeah, that's a quick half hour or so work through with Capture One. As I said previously, there will be more advanced workshops, but this should be something just to get you going. There will be further tutorials with regards to tethered capture in the Copy Studio, and also the Photo Studios, which will be uploaded on the relevant channels. I'd be grateful if you could let me know how useful, or indeed not, this was, how much sense it made. So if you could feedback on Teams, I'd be very grateful. But for now, that's it. So thank you very much for watching, and take good care. Bye.